So today we're going to be discussing Jesus in the Old Testament. There we go. All right. So we've already went through the Old Testament books and noted which ones were Scripture. And this was because the New Testament Scriptures gave their approval of these books. But now we have to ask a question. Where does the authority of the New Testament come from? And that's the question. Where does the authority of the New Testament come from? God? More specifically, which of the Godhead? Spirit? Jesus. Yes. From Christ. And then, how do we know Christ had such authority to speak for God? Where did Christ's authority come from? God. How? How do we know that? Miracles. The resurrection. Anything else? Confirmed prophecy. About or producing? About, yep. And producing as well. So, by his power and the resurrection, by him prophesying about future events, and by prophecies about him. And so that's what we're going to be going through today. And so we have a threefold cord of testimony here. The Father, the Son, the Spirit, the prophecy, the power, the fulfillment. And it forms a self-supporting lattice. Who made these little popsicle sticks throwing stars as a kid? My wife didn't know what these were. And so I didn't realize it wasn't as all-reaching as I expected it. But these you can make, and they fully support themselves. They will hold together until they are hit against something. But they're fun and easy to make, and that is kind of how this testimony goes, except it doesn't fall apart when it hits something. But it holds together underneath its own support. That's the metaphor there. So we have many prophecies in the Old Testament. We have usually destructions of places, because those are the easiest ones to confirm. Tyre, Babylon, Nineveh, Edom, and Alexander the Great coming and going. So this lesson is primarily based on a J. Warner Wallace lesson. Who knows who J. Warner Wallace is? I know Jeff does, because he did a lesson similar to this one, copying his work. It's not plagiarism if you give approval of who did it. But I'm going to change it a little bit. So what he did is he used his detective skills. He's a cold case detective. And he separated out clear evidence, evidence that points to the person, that will identify the person. So 6'4", 200-some pounds individual, male. That's going to point to the person. But cloaked evidence or unclear evidence or confirmation evidence is going to make sure that you know that this individual was, but you cannot use that evidence until you identify the individual first, such as, say, you found a button at the crime scene. You don't know where this button came from. Maybe the victim, maybe someone else, maybe the perpetrator. But if you find a guy that's missing that button, you can then connect him, and that's evidence for him being the perpetrator, at least present. And so that's how he kind of approached it. But he looked at this as a 21st century American. Just like looking at a riddle or a math problem, if you already know the answer, it's kind of hard to get your mindset to where you didn't know the answer. It seems so much obvious after you look at it that you can't really understand a person that doesn't know the answer looking at it very well. It's very easy to have that bias in there. And so what I did is I went to the Jewish writings. The Jewish writings have a whole bunch as far as what the Messiah would be. There is a website, wolfmueller.co, who put 456 Old Testament passages considered to be messianic by the rabbis. And so I went through that, and we're going to be discussing those. So since I have bias, no pun intended with my last name, I'm trying to get rid of that, and that's what we're trying to do here. So we're going to look at just the clear evidence. We're not going to be looking at the cloaked evidence either. We don't have enough time for that. That'd be a wonderful class to go through. And so if I include a piece, a verse that is in the clear evidence, but you think is more cloaked, or you have a piece of cloaked evidence you think is more clear, there is some subjectivity to that. So I try to just stick with this, and if we're arguing over nuance, I don't care either way, it works. If it's cloaked evidence or clear evidence, it's still evidence. So hopefully that wasn't confusing enough. Who here is a little bit confused about what we're going to be doing? All right. Yes?
Comment.
Sure, okay.
It used to be the old timers used to say, and I couldn't quite sealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. And it's somewhat similar to what you're bringing out there.
And we'll be seeing a lot of that, a lot of the revealing of what the Old Testament was, because the Jews were a little bit confused about this, as we'll see. They had a hard time piecing this information together. They knew it pointed to the Messiah or Messianic times, but they didn't know how. And so we'll be going over that, but yes. Any other comments or questions? All right. We'll be going through this chronologically. So we're going to be covering the material of Job and Moses. These are the oldest books of the Old Testament. So in Genesis 3:15, we know that an individual born of woman, who is a male, will come. And based upon Leviticus 26:12, he's going to reconcile us with God. And some of these I'll say it this way. So we have ones in parentheses here. These are ones that seem very obvious to us, 21st century Americans. But the Jews didn't write about those. At least if they did, we don't have the writings of that. So I put those there because we use that to point to the Messiah being descendant of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Judah. The Jews didn't use those verses. The Jews used Genesis 49:10. They used that to support that idea there. And so when you see something in parentheses, that's what you'd use to support. What is not in parentheses is what the Jews use. We're not going to be using this for every single point, but just to show you that while we may hold to what it says, we don't necessarily use the verses that the Jews did. The Jews had a different logic. Still worked because they came to the right conclusion. And it makes me think it's so interesting how God can put two separate verses. One will say the same thing to one group of people. The other will say the same thing to the other group of people, bringing us from wherever we are to the same point. And so it's interesting at the very least. We also have verses in Numbers there. Genesis 3:15 also tells us that he's going to crush evil at his own expense. The bruising of the heel, crushing of the head. He's going to bless all the nations, and this will be at the end of all things. Again, we would use Job 19, or end of things, not end of all things, I apologize. Job 19:25 to support this at the last there. But the Jews used Deuteronomy 23:11. And that is a weird one. So if you want to turn to Deuteronomy 23:11, this is what they used to support that the Messiah would come at the end of things. In verse 10 it says, "If any man among you becomes unclean because of a nocturnal emission, then he shall go outside the camp. He shall not come inside the camp. But when evening comes, he shall bathe himself in water, and at the sun sets, he may come inside the camp." That's a pretty vague passage about cleanliness. But the Jews used this to support that the Messiah would come at the sunset, at the end of things. A little odd as far as us goes, as far as logic, but they got the right answer from it. And last, he'll be a prophet like Moses. So I would lean more towards Deuteronomy 18:19 supporting that, but they leaned towards Exodus 15:1, the Song of Moses. They said that this song would be the Song of Messiah, a new song, basically, which, again, we see in the New Testament. There's a lot about that. And again, different logic, different people. God put it so that both groups could understand and come to the same point. Any questions on all this? Any thoughts that pop out to you? Any verses that you just want to put a little star next to, shine a little light on? Let me read that. "I will make my dwelling among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. And I will walk among you, and I will be your God, and you shall be my people. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that you should not be their slaves. And I have broken the bars of your yoke and made you walk erect." Leviticus 26:12. Yeah, very, very powerful stuff, and they applied that to being fulfilled with the Messiah. Yeah. But even without Jesus coming, they understood that to be about him. So he did clear it up even further, but it's not as veiled as we might think on first look. There is some hint to that. We can see through the veil a little bit like Moses' veil. But again, yeah, the New Testament definitely clears it up further. I see another hand.
I was going to say the Deuteronomy passage, verse 15 actually starts the reference.
Okay. Deuteronomy 18:15? All right. Well, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? All right. So, in summary, our who, what, when, where, why. What will this person do? He will crush evil. Why? To reconcile with God and to bless the nations. How? He's going to do this at his own expense. When? At the end of things. And who is this? It's going to be a male descendant of Abraham through Judah. Any questions on that? All right. Next, we'll be covering David, Solomon, and the other writers of Psalms, Proverbs, etc. So, in Psalms 2, primarily 7 through 12, we see that this individual will be called God's son and will rule the nations. Of Psalms 18:50, he's going to be of the lineage of David. Psalms 21, he will rule forever, the length of days forever. He's going to be mocked and known for his righteousness. Everyone turn to Psalms 21. So this whole psalm could be read and applied to the Messiah. At least the Jews did. Now, we're going to be primarily looking at, I believe, verse 4 there. Actually, 3 through 7, apologies. So Psalms 21, 3 through 7. For you meet him with rich blessings, and you set a crown of fine gold upon his head. He asked life of you, and you gave it to him, length of days forever and ever. His glory is great through your salvation. Splendor and majesty you bestow upon him. For you make him most blessed forever, and make him glad with the joy of your presence. For the king trusts in the Lord, and through the steadfast love of the Most High he shall not be moved. So we have this passage, the whole chapter really, but primarily this passage here that we're going to be focusing on, speaking of the Messiah. Yet go to the very next chapter, in 22. We're going to be looking specifically at verses 6 and 7. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind, despised by the people. All who seek me mock me. They make mouths at me. They wag their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. Both of these passages were known by the Jews to reference the Messiah. But this confused them. We have two seemingly contradictory writings. We have uplifted, length of days forever, mocked, scorned, death. Now, to us after the fact, the answer seems obvious. It's easy to combine them. But this was a major question. This goes back to what John and Scott were saying. The New Testament reveals this and gives us the solution to this quandary. But this is what the Jews, for 1,000 years, as you can see, or so, were delving into, were struggling with. We're trying to find the answer to this incredible riddle that they were given. What are some of your thoughts as far as trying to see the differences and similarities with Psalms 21 and 22? Would you, on first glance, obviously connect these two? Or would you think we have potentially two messianic figures, as some Jews did?
It reminds me of the study that John did on contradictions. You know, two things that say something different are not necessarily contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, as you said, we know there's really a time difference there. At one time he was mocked. That doesn't contradict the fact that his reign was forever.
Mm-hmm. And so potential contradictions, whenever you look at them, you can find a solution to them. And it seems pretty obvious after the fact, but beforehand it can be quite veiled.
Well, it seems obvious to me when you look at the life of Jesus that these two passages represent where he came from and what happened to him on the earth and then where he went.
Mm-hmm.
From glory to glory. But in between, God gave his only begotten Son, and whoever believed in him might have life. And that was full of despair and full of death and evil. And it seems to me like this passage, these two passages
Yeah, so he came from glory. He used this to fulfill our glory, basically, yeah.
A point of confusion I think that many of the Jews sort of struggled with is they were given the model of blessings and cursings in their own personal relationship as a nation with God. This individual is receiving both. And so from the Jewish mind, he's being mocked, he's being cursed by others. Is he being judged by Yahweh? So is he not morally upright? And that seems to be a contradiction or confusion because those physical attributes of how they interacted with their world was directly tied to their relationship with Yahweh and under their system. So if they're going to apply it to this individual, something's different.
Mhm. Almost kind of like a karmic justice, where if they do bad things against God, God will punish them. Bad things will happen to them.
Productive, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yet we have here an individual suffering horribly, or at least being mocked horribly. We'll find the suffering in a little bit. But we have this individual having bad things happen to him. Why? Why is this occurring?
To me, these have always been very humbling. And you can look at these and see why certain Jews were so rigid in their expectations of what the Messiah would be that they rejected the Messiah that actually came.
Mhm.
And I wonder how often am I, because of my upbringing or previous studies, I have one viewpoint of a particular passage or a group of passages, and I'm so set on that that I won't listen to the fact that there may be a harmonizable component that I need to consider. And, they're going to be judged because they didn't accept both views. And it doesn't mean we jump around and are constantly believing everything that comes our way. But we need to investigate with an open mind that there may be alternatives to what I believe about certain things that I draw from Scripture. Anyway, this humbling and a little bit scary.
And we all have our own biases, and we need to do everything we can to try and see through them, be aware of them, and it is very humbling. It shows how important this is that we get it right.
So trying to set aside what we know of the after the effect, my storyteller mind kind of kicks in on
Mhm.
this. And the two elements I see as a possibility is either one of those sets of verses is talking about how we who are in the know see him and those who are on the outside see him, which would also go along with the history the Jewish people have had in their slavery and taken down and how they're seen by those around them. Or it would be a before and after
Mhm.
element, kind of a pauper to prince type mentality, which we do know from historical elements that a lot of the Jews were looking for a king that's going to come in and conquer and put them back in as a physical nation on top of all of their enemies. And I can see either or both of
Mhm.
those in between these two passages if I set aside the after knowledge of what we know actually occurred. And the truth, that second one in particular, he did become a king that is on top of everything, just not in the way they were expecting.
I would say probably both, since you have the chronological, mocked and glory, but also the earthly versus spiritual. To us, Christ's mocking is our glory. Because he did that, we are glorified. And so I see both points you're making, yeah. Any other comments before we move on?
I don't want to jump ahead where you you're going, but I see a lot of Job in this story.
Yeah.
I think the Jews would have understood Job didn't seem to be an unrighteous man, and yet he was punished severely, and yet at the end he was blessed again.
I don't know. I've not read all the Jewish writings, so I've read very little of it. But yeah, yeah, we definitely can. But I don't know if they would have. I think that they saw some messianic passages in there, but I don't know. You can definitely find some writings on Job if you want to go look that up. You can share it with the class. But yeah, I don't know. Did I see another hand back there? Nope. All right. Well, we'll continue on with David and Solomon. We know that he's going to be a ruler from Judah. So not just from Judah, but a ruler, a priest of the order of Melchizedek. The Jews did connect this with the Messiah, though it seems that they didn't really expand upon that a lot. We see this more expanded, of course, in the book of Hebrews. And there was other writings in the first century about what the order of Melchizedek was. Philo, the Jew, wrote about it as well. We know that the Messiah will execute judgment on the nations, but also do great things for the nations. And he's going to do the miracles of the past. The Jews took this in Ecclesiastes 1:9, if you want to turn there. I can turn my phone back on, Ecclesiastes. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. So they had that as a messianic reference. So the Messiah will do things like Moses did, like Elijah. He's going to do miracles like that. And that there will be no remembrance of former things. A few verses down, 11. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of latter things yet to be among those who come after. So these are passages I would not have connected with the Messiah if the Jews did. That being said, I would firmly hold that the Messiah did miracles, and that comparatively, the new basically overshadows the old because it's so much better. Any questions on these before we summarize from 1000 to 800 BCE, give or take? Any thoughts on those Ecclesiastes passages? Would you have made that connection, or any thoughts? Okay, maybe as an adult, but not as a child. All right. So in summary, we now have the red being added. So he will crush evil, will rule forever, execute judgment and great things for the nations, be a priest of the order of Melchizedek. Now where? A ruler from Judah. So he's going to come not only from the tribe of Judah, but also the land of Judah, because the Judah now has their land at this time. Will be mocked, will do miracles of the past with no remembrance of former things. He's going to be called God's son of the lineage of David, known for his righteousness. So from Abraham, Judah, now to David. And it's going to be a righteous individual. Next, we're going to cover some of the prophets. About the same time period, 1 Samuel, we see that the Jews thought that he'll be a king given strength and be exalted. And they took that to mean exalted beyond what came before him. So exalted more than Moses, more than David, more than these individuals. He's going to save the humble and bring down the haughty. Will rule with the fear of God. And it's going to be when Israel is at their lowest. This verse from Hosea 2:2 is one of those verses that, again, I wouldn't have connected initially, but the Jews did. It's going to happen in the latter days. He's going to redeem them from death. And God's Spirit will be poured out on all flesh. And not only from the land of Judah, but specifically from Bethlehem. So we have these passages, and they give us a lot more information. Any questions on these? Now we also have punishment as well. He's going to bring down the haughty. So not only good things, but also bad things are going to be brought about by the Messiah, or at least perceived bad things by the individuals suffering them.
It's actually from the previous slide, you mentioned the sun aspect.
Mhm.
Touch upon more, or?
Yes and no. Yeah. So if you want to discuss it more, we can right now.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, so they have a few other passages that seem to have similar titles, which we'll go over when we get to them. I don't remember exactly where they are. But I don't know exactly how they dealt with some of these. They mentioned them, they discussed them a bit, but I don't really know how involved it was, how many Jews did. These are just some Jew at some time before Christ connected that with the Messiah. So we're just showing that it could be connected prior to, without the biases we have, but I don't know to what extent widespread such beliefs were.
Talking about sobering elements and having this reference of bringing down the haughty. The Jews didn't see themselves as haughty.
Mm-hmm.
And yet what we see all throughout the Gospels in particular with Christ's interaction with the
It's very easy when you are connected strongly with the most powerful being, greatest thing in the world, beyond the world. It's very easy to think you're a little bit closer to that than you actually are.
Just a note about how specific some of these are, that micro-reference, much as is Bethlehem, it says Bethlehem, Ephrathah.
Mhm.
There was more than one Bethlehem in Israel, but it lists the specific one.
Mhm.
um,
Yep.
years ago.
And not only that, we know that he's coming from the land of Judah as well, ruler from Judah. So yeah, two good points that we know exactly which Bethlehem this is. And for time's sake, we'll just skip on. We'll skip these because we will cover them all at the end. Next, we come to the largest section, Isaiah. Isaiah writing 700, 600s BC, so 600 years before the time of Christ. When the Lord will wash away the filth of Zion with judgment and a spirit of burning. Severe judgment upon Israel. The government will be upon his shoulders. He'll be called Mighty God. There are a number of other names with that as well, but Mighty God is probably the more notable. Will bring great joy. The Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him, will bring about peace, will swallow up death forever, and will raise the dead. He will heal the blind and deaf. He will not cry aloud or lift up his voice. Will save those turning to God from all the earth. Will be higher than all that came before. Will be marred beyond human semblance, rejected by men, a man of sorrows. Will be pierced for our transgressions, oppressed and afflicted. By oppression and judgment was taken away. Will make his grave with the wicked, yet see his offspring. It pleased the Lord to crush him. He shall see his offspring and prolong his days, and will pour out his soul unto death. He's going to be numbered with the transgressors. And even more, will bear the sin of many, will make intercession for the transgressors. Come to those in Jacob who turn from transgression. The offspring will be known among the nations and acknowledged as the offspring of the Lord, that the Lord has blessed. He's going to bring a day of vengeance and will bring forth a new heavens and earth. So we have a lot that Isaiah gives. Are there any of these that you guys would like to talk about, that you guys would like to point out? Because we have a lot of suffering and also vengeance, judgment.
I always took a drawing to Isaiah 9 where it speaks about the Messiah. It will be his government, his kingdom, and like that. And it will be resting on his shoulder,
Mhm.
and it will increase, and it will be one of justice and righteousness. And the fact that we see in the New Testament that Christ gave for his government, especially for the church, and giving gifts to men, those men who would become evangelists, apostles,
Mhm.
and prophets, and elder teachers.
And we see the authority that Christ has, and he gave it to those. We will be touching upon that at the end, Lord willing, yeah. Any other thoughts or comments?
Mark mentioned humility, especially in chapter 53 going on. We see an example of humility, which is reinforced in Philippians chapter 2.
This is very humbling. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Just previous study on this topic, this is one I really enjoy. The aspect of being associated with or called God, it kind of overlaps with the idea of being the Son. I remember that being one where the Jews had a lot of debate on.
Mhm.
Everyone agreed he's going to be exalted. Everyone agreed he's going to have some sort of status. But how is he connected to God? We're Israel. We are his son.
Mhm.
We collectively are. There's no one who's going to satisfy that role. And so you'll have some Jews coming over like, it's an extension of that.
Mhm.
He's bearing that mantle. Yes, it's being used in the singular case, but let's not blow that out of proportion. And I just recall, if you can pull up the dialogue between those are really good.
Yeah. I can only imagine how confusing that would be, trying to understand Son of God, mighty God, but obviously not speaking about the Father. So we'll summarize this. What will he do? He's going to bring about a day of vengeance, a severe judgment upon Israel. The government will be upon his shoulders. The Spirit of the Lord will be upon him. He will raise the dead, heal the blind and the deaf. When? When the Lord will wash away the filth of Zion with judgment and a spirit of burning. Who is this? This is mighty God, King of kings, Lord of lords. Will be higher than all that came before, rejected by men, a man of sorrows. Don't get any more information from where, but as far as why, we get a lot more. He's going to bring joy and peace, to swallow up death forever, to save those turning to God in Jacob and from all the earth, to bear the sins of many, make intercession for the transgressor. Offspring will be known in all the nations, and bring forth a new heaven and earth. And how? He's going to do this by not crying aloud. He will be marred beyond human semblance, pierced for our transgressions, oppressed, afflicted, and was taken away. Will pour out his soul unto death. His grave was made with the wicked, numbered with the transgressors. Pleased the Lord to crush him, yet he will see his offspring and prolong his days. So Isaiah gives us a ton of information, almost, I think, more than what we had before. And this, again, was until about 690 BC, give or take. Next, we come to Ezekiel and Jeremiah. And while there is a lot in here as far as unclear evidence, as far as confirmation evidence, we don't have as much clear evidence pointing to Christ as we did with Isaiah. He will be called a righteous branch. He will make a new covenant. A new heart will be given to the people of God. God will sprinkle the people clean and restore the land like the Garden of Eden. Any thoughts on these? As far as the land comment, what do you make of that?
Going back to one of Mark's earlier comments, I could see this being a stumbling block again of, if I'm only considering physical, this is our domain. We're having a set up the world again, and we're not being ruled by others.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the physical, are you looking at the kingdom, the earthly manifestation, or are you looking at the physical land itself, the trees, the plants and such? And Israel's very arid. More lushness would always be a good thing. Or are you looking at the spiritual land, the land of God, because God is spirit. And so the land, frequently, especially in prophetic settings, can refer to the people of Israel, not just the land of Israel.
The type,
Sorry?
it's a type, typology.
Oh, typology, yes, thank you. It is a typology, yes.
Seems like it's a lot of restoration to innocence to me.
Restoration to innocence, restoration to what we should be, with the Garden of Eden reference there, before the fall. All right. All right, so now we have him being called a righteous branch, to make a new covenant with Israel, to sprinkle the people clean, to restore the land like the Garden of Eden. And this new covenant, I just can't, it surprises me, I'll say that the Jews were aware of that they knew something new was coming. But they still had a hard time with it as far as the changes, as far as adhering to the law of Moses. We see this being a stumbling block for some Jews in the New Testament. Yet, to make a new covenant was known prior to that. And how? By giving a new heart to the people of God. Next, we come to Daniel. So now we're in the 500s BC. We're getting closer. The Messiah will be a stone that grows into a great mountain that will fill the earth. The Messiah will come on a cloud to the Ancient of Days, the Father, and be given a kingdom of all peoples, nations, and languages. Will restore the sanctuary to its rightful state, and this will be when the second temple will be destroyed. This is Daniel. So the Jews understood that this would be after the second temple was built and destroyed. And this will occur at the time of the end. We see a lot of latter days end. They know something major is going to be happening at this point. And there are other things you can make. There's a lot as far as this, making this passage here in Daniel 7, pointing to Jesus being divine. But just for space's sake, and since we already kind of covered that with mighty God, Son of God, we're just focusing on this as far as the leadership, the kingdom aspects of all nations. Any other thoughts or comments? So now we have a what added more to it. We see that a stone, actually, I'll skip this since we'll have one more, I'm running low on time. We'll cover again all this at the end. So next we come to the last, Zechariah, Ezra, Malachi, and Haggai. So this is 500s to 400s. This is the end of the Old Covenant, Old Testament. So God will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land so that the treasures of all the nations will come in and fill God's house with glory. The Messiah will come with salvation mounted on a donkey. He will be called the branch to remove the iniquity of the land. He will build the temple of the Lord and sit on his throne and be a priest. He shall speak peace to the nations. And this, Zechariah 6, is speaking in the verse about the governor and the priest at the time who rebuilt the temple for the second temple. But the Jews understood this to be a messianic promise as well, a typology, that this would be about the Messiah. The Messiah will be the cornerstone. He will be pierced and mourned as one weeps for a firstborn. All nations will come against Jerusalem and destroy it. A messenger will come before the Messiah. Those will be spared as a man spares his son who serves him. So he's going to spare people as a man serves his son who serves him. Elijah the prophet will be sent before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. So we have a lot more here. Oh, sorry. One thing I want to note is that we see continually that those who repent of their transgressions, who those turn away, who serve. So there is some sort of aspect that it's not everybody, but only those who turn to God that will be spared, that will get this. There is a judgment, but there is a way out of that judgment. There is a judgment coming on Jerusalem, and there's a way out of that judgment coming on Jerusalem. So in summary, what is going to happen? What is the Messiah going to do? He will crush evil, will rule forever. The government upon his shoulders. He will come on a cloud to the Ancient of Days and be given a kingdom of all nations. And he will be a priest of the order of Melchizedek. He will execute judgment on and do great things for the nations. He will save the humble and bring down the haughty. Bring a day of vengeance, a severe judgment upon Israel. The Spirit of the Lord will be upon him, and he will raise the dead, heal the blind and deaf. He will be a stone that grows into a mountain that fills the earth, and all nations will come to God's house. Who? It's going to be a male descendant of Abraham through Judah, of the lineage of David, will be higher than all that came before him, called God's Son, mighty God, King of kings, Lord of lords. Called a righteous branch, known for his righteousness, rejected by men, a man of sorrows, who came with salvation mounted on a donkey. When? At the end of things. Will occur at the time of the end, the latter days, when Israel is at their lowest, when the Lord will wash away the filth of Zion with judgment and a spirit of burning. The second temple will be destroyed, and all nations will come against Jerusalem and destroy it. But he'll be preceded by a messenger, Elijah the prophet. Where? He's going to come from Judah, from Bethlehem. But how? He's going to do miracles of the past with no remembrance of the former things. Will be given strength as a king and be exalted. Will rule with the fear of God. God's Spirit will be poured out on all flesh. But he will not cry aloud. He will be marred beyond human semblance, pierced for our transgressions, oppressed, afflicted, and be taken away. He will pour out his soul unto death, and his grave will be made with the wicked, and at his own expense all this will happen. He's going to be mocked, numbered with the transgressors. Yet he will see his offspring and prolong his days, because it pleased the Lord to crush him, and he will give a new heart to the people of God, and be a cornerstone, be pierced and mourned as a firstborn. Why? To reconcile with God, to bless the nations, redeem from death. Offspring will be known in all the nations. Redeem them from death, swallow up death forever. Save those turning to God and Jacob and from all the earth. Make intercession for the transgressors. Bear sins. Sprinkle the people clean. Bring forth the new heavens and earth. Make a new covenant with Israel. Restore the land like the Garden of Eden. Restore the sanctuary to its rightful state. Build the temple of the Lord and sit on his throne and be a priest. Remove iniquity of the land. Speak peace to the nations, to spare the people as a man spares his son who serves him. This all is what the Messiah is, or at least as far as the Jews understood it. And this is just the clear evidence, and not even all the clear evidence. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go over all that, let alone all the confirmation evidences. But this alone is enough to point to Christ. This points to Christ completely. There were some questions the Jews had, questions I know I would have. But once Jesus came, you could see how all the pieces would fit together. And this is why, or at least one of the reasons why, Jesus has the authority. And he gave that authority to his apostles. And this was confirmed by the gifts of the Holy Spirit, which again further confirms Jesus' authority. These apostles, they had to see Jesus' earthly ministry, see Jesus in his resurrected state, and be sent by Jesus himself. There were many little a apostles, little a saints in the New Testament, but only the apostles, big A, were sent out by Jesus. These are the ones that had Jesus' authority. So Jesus is pointed to directly and or indirectly throughout the Old Testament. Christ has this authority, and we see that it was confirmed by Scripture. And when we study our New Testaments and history, by power and prophecy. Jesus then took his authority, gave it to his apostles, and that is how we can be confident we have God's word, because we see these books that we'll be studying, Lord willing, over the next several weeks were written by the apostles and have the authority of Jesus. Are there any questions on this? Any thoughts? Any comments? All right. Well, thank you very much.